Alright, good morning. Yeah, no, I've already said good morning to you guys, but this is now on the recording. Good morning. We've got, so we know in the Fibonacci sequence we start with the numbers 0 and 1. When we start with that number, we know that we take the first number plus the second number to give us the third number. So over here, it would be 0 plus 1 gives us 1. Does this make sense? So if we look at the loop of what's happening here, it's the first number plus the second number gives us the third number. Then after that, it's the second number plus the third number gives us the fourth number, and so forth. So when you're looking at the screen here, which I should actually be putting onto what is the word called, laser pointer. So as you go from 0 to 1, so you start with those two numbers. 0 plus 1 gives you 3. 1 plus 1 gives you 2. So it's the first plus the second number gives you the third number. Second number plus the third number gives you the fourth number. So the solution to that, as far as the actual contents going is we make x equal to 1, we make x equal to 0, we make y equal to 1, that's not equals, that's a minus sign, equal to 1, we then make z is equal to x plus y. We then make x equal to y, y equal to z. And we repeat that process, don't we? Does this make sense? So that is the process that we need to happen, is we start off with x is equal to 0 and y. And this section here that I'm highlighting now, this is a repeat. So technically, this x and y is 0 is actually not inside the loop. That should happen prior to the loop. So before, when we start, this is where x and y should equal to 1 at the beginning, and then the loop, this process should be looped. And each time z changes value, as it should be printed out. Do you guys get that? That's the fundamentals of it, and then we end after a certain number of iterations. So it's after an inputted number of iterations. Okay, so that is where we end. Do you guys get this? So I've solved it in my head. I kind of get what's happened. So now we need to come up with the pseudocode of it. So we go to our pseudocode statement, and we now need to work with it. So we start off by going int x. We can even say is equal to 0. You guys are not on the new side. Thank you for telling me. So you start off by going int x is equal to 0. Sorry, this should be capital letters according to. There are different conventions as stated. Y is equal to 1. So we have our starting values. Are you guys good with that? You can declare and initialize on the same line. I do hear you saying that we should go x comma y, and then we go x is equal to that, so we declare and initialize separately. I must be honest, you start to become a bit lazier as you start programming, because you tend to just do everything one line. But it's the same, but it's logically a good idea to separate the concept of declaring and initializing. Okay, so x is equal to 0, y is equal to thing, and we also need obviously a variable z, and we would need a counter to count iterations. So iterations to start off with, that's not how you spell iterations, that's iterations. Kind of funny. No. Okay. Iterations, or I can call it, if you want, I can call it I. It starts off at 0, and then we can go. Okay, this is why we use I. Okay, so I'm actually even going to live. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to have Max here. Oh, hello. What did I do there? You guys get this loop. Do I need to explain it? This will just loop the maximum number of times. So whatever the user inputs, it will loop that number of times. Yes? Okay, so now we're going to also have to have a display. So I'm going to need a string display, which is going to keep track of what I'm going to display. Again, I should keep my casing similar. So I'm going to then say display is equal to I can even just say 0, 1, which means it's already got x and y values in there. And then here I could say z is equal to x plus y. I could even do that in here, your choice. And then once I've done that, I would say display is equal to display. Why do I add display there again? Otherwise it'll override it. It's very important there. I did actually notice when I was glancing at a couple of yours, you forgot to say display is equal to display plus whatever, then you just override it, so it won't add on to the end or increment to the end. Plus a comma space plus z. And then we just do exactly like we determined earlier. X is equal to y, y is equal to z. And then now we've got display that is being operating there. And now all we would need to do is we would need to output the display. So if we go over on what's happening with RAM here, we have the variables x, y, z, and max. Do I need to go through this with you? Does it help when I do go through this with you? Yeah. Okay. So let's start with line number 1. So line number 1, it says int x, y, z, and max. So what that would do is it would actually create me. I'm just going to add an additional a variable here. It's going to create a variable called x. Sorry, xx. It's got a variable called x. It will create a variable called y. Excuse my casing, I'm not going to fix that right now. And a variable called z, and it will have a variable called max. So that's the first line. First line done. You guys happy? Okay, so that's what the first line does. We then input max. Let's say 5. I think 5 is a good enough number. So the user inputted 5. String display. Okay, so we now have a string display. So let's go and increase our RAM size so we can add the string display into the mix. I'm going to delete the condition because we actually don't need a condition, because it's just a loop that counts from 1 to whatever. So I'm going to delete the condition here. I'm just going to make this our display variable. Okay, so we've declared our display as well now. Okay, so we've got all our variables there. Are we happy with the first step? So pretty. Next step, we're now going to move our button further down. We now go input max. Sorry, we had done that already. String display, I had done that. Sorry, I should really move the dot according to what I'm doing, but you guys get in my head, I'm going to logical. X is equal to 0, so now we get to x is equal to 0, that makes it become 0, then it goes down, y becomes 1, so y 1. The next thing we do is we say display is equal to 0, 1, so 0, space 1. You notice that I do put the space there. It's important to include the spaces, especially later on when you get into other programming. To make things display correctly, you need to remember your literal should include spaces if it is. So we go down to our for loop. So our for loop technically creates an additional variable called I. So I'm just going to, in our for loop, we don't actually, the declaration happens within there as well as the initialization and all that, so you don't have to actually duplicate that. So this is going to be I starts at 1. To max. So we understand that I is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. Sorry, do you guys get me? So that's what I is going to do. Now we're going to go down. Z is equal to x plus y. So x plus y is 1. Okay, so then it goes display is equal to display plus a comma plus a z. So my display is going to add a comma, and what's the value of z? 1. So then x is equal to y. So what does x become? 1. Y is equal to z. What does y become? 1. It stays 1, but okay, it does become 1. Then n4, which means it goes back to the top. So my I becomes 2. So it's now the second time it's looping around. So now z is equal to x plus y. X plus y is 2. So z becomes 2. Display is equal to display plus comma plus, so it becomes 2. X is equal to y. So x becomes 1, y becomes, so y is equal to z, so what does y become? 2. Then we go down n4, our loop goes back up to the top again. R becomes 3. So z, z becomes x plus y, which is what? 3. Display is equal to display plus a comma plus z. So display will become what display is plus 3. We move down to the next line. X becomes y. So what does x become? 2. Y becomes 3. It's not 33. 3. It goes to the end 4. It loops back up to the top. It goes 4i is equal to 1 to max. So now I becomes the next value, which is 4. We then go down to z. Z is equal to x plus y. So what does z become? 5. Display is equal to display plus z. So we'll add on to it a comma 5 because that's what we said, plus a comma plus z. X is equal to x is equal to y, so it becomes 3. Y is equal to z, so y becomes 5. N4, which loops it right back to the top again, which means I becomes 5. So we know this is going to be our last loop. But z is equal to x plus y, which becomes 8. Display is equal to display plus comma plus z. So comma 8. X is equal to y 5. Y is equal to z 8. N4, we're now at max. I is now max, so we've done with our incrementing loop because I contains the same value as max, so I has gone from 1 all the way through to 5. We end that, we go and output our display. So our output would be exactly what is in display. So our output would literally be our copy and our paste from our display. Our output would be that. Yes.
So wouldn't max be 5? So it only displays 5 numbers.
No, because not in your test or exam, a number of iterations, I kind of mean a number of times it will loop. I don't care. I'm not going to be specific on whether it counts the first 2 numbers or not. It depends on how you could read the question both ways. Do you want to display exactly the user inputted number on the sequences, or do you want to include? Yeah, I don't really care. You're right. I could potentially go max minus 2, like Alistair was saying, and you're completely correct. But if you go minus 2, it's the same diff. I'm not going to deduct marks on that because it's an interpretation of the. Julian, does that kind of make sense? But yeah, good question, Julian. It does make sense, but it's not. I'm not that. This is about coding, not about the specific knowledge on there. Are you guys good with this? Okay, so now the next question is a little bit more. Had a slightly different structure to it. Now you'll notice this is. I did put a whole bunch of things where I added this in separately. Where you notice first, when you have actually 2 loops in this case, because we have one loop once. So I goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to the max number of inputs. Do you guys get me? So there'll be a start of 1 and an end of a user entered max number of inputs. I lost my mouse. I had a mouse at once upon a time. Okay, there it is. And then this would be max iterations. So we have a counter again, where we're counting from 1 until max iterations. Now you'll see I goes 1, 2, 3, 4 until the maximum iterations. Do you guys get that? But now my internal loop, which we keep track with J, the first time when I is 1, J will only loop once. When I is 2, J is going to loop twice. When I is 3, J is going to loop 1, 2, 3. So my inner loop is going to start. So again, I've got an outer loop that starts at I, ends at max iterations. Do you guys get this? Okay? My inner loop is going to start at 1 in this case, and it's going to stop at I. So when I is 1, it's going to start at 1 and end at 1. When I is 2, it's going to start at 1 and end at I, at 2. When I is 3, it's going to start at 1, end at 3. So my inner loop is dependent on my outer loop. That's the whole purpose of doing this number sequence. You're never going to be asked to code for a company a thing that will count with number 1 and then 1, 2 and then 1, 2, 3. But this exact same loop deals with sorting. It's what's called a bubble sort. This exact same kind of loop. Another loop that you can do reverse, could deal with another problem to solve. So you can, the whole purpose of this is for you guys to understand the inner loop loops based on the outer loop. Do you guys get me? Yes, no? Okay. So that is what the main thing that you guys need to understand, that the inner loop is dependent on the outer loop. And inside each loop, we just literally need to print out I, and so out of this loop, we need to add an enter. So in this loop, all we need to do is we need to print out J, so that we would need to output whatever J is. And in the external area, you would actually, inside here, you would just want to add into my display, you would want to add a \n. So in other words, 1, in the outer loop, enter. Inner loop, 1, 2, outer loop, enter. Inner loop, 1, 2, 3, outer loop, enter. Do you guys get me? So now, if we're going to do this, sorry, I should have been pointing here, I was pointing on the wrong screen. But yeah, so the inner loop would go 1, it would exit, it would go to the outer loop, we press enter. It starts again. The inner loop goes 1, 2, the outer loop then goes enter. Let's start the outer loop again. 1, 2, 3, enter. So that's what we want our program to do. So now we proceed to the next slide where we actually want to code this. I'm going to move my little ball across so that we can keep track of it here. We're going to start off by declaring the variables we want, and I'm actually going to just for now create my string display. I am then going to go for, I want to create my for loop, I is equal to 1 to max. We don't have a max, so I need to go int max, and then I'll go input max, so the user will input max. Do. I then want to now go and create my inner loop, so for j is equal to 1 to I. Remember, our inner loop is dependent, it will stop. When I is 1, it will go, when I is 1, the inner loop will go 1 to 1. When I becomes 2, the inner loop will go 1, 2. When I is 3, the inner loop will go 1, 2, 3. Ben, are you awake? And Danelle, you good, you see eyes. Now, what we've got from there is we're now going to go and say our inside here we want to display is equal to display plus. Now, is this legal? Why is that not legal? Well, no, it's not illegal, but why wouldn't it work? Because I can't say display is equal to display plus j unless display had been given a value, because remember, it didn't actually exist in RAM yet. It was just a pointer, but it wasn't pointing anything, so the program would have gone, freak out, man, and it would have broken. Okay, so now display is equal to display plus j. I then go down to I end my for loop. I would then go display is equal to display plus a enter character. I then would go and I would end my for, I would then output my display. My inner loop is dependent on my outer loop, and depending on what you want to do, it's just literally a matter of manipulating how you order you put this in. You might potentially want 2 inner loops, that kind of stuff. You guys get me? Now, from here, shall I go through it and then we're done with this, and you guys can mark your tests. So let's start. String display. So we've got a variable called display. Again, we don't have conditions, so I'm going to use the condition. I have display I and j and max. So I have 4. So let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to delete the condition statements because we're not actually going to have a condition. I'm going to make my RAM a bit bigger. I'm then going to put my display variable in here. Okay, so let's go and add. So I have a variable called display there. So I've declared a variable called display. It creates the space for me. I then go display is equal to blank, which means I initialize it, which means I get this pink thing gets added until that line technically would only be a pointer. I then go to int dismax, so which means I declare a variable called max. I'll then go here and it would be max. I then go and input max. So max, I'm going to do 5 again if that's okay, or should I do less? That was 5, fine. Okay. So now, then I go for I is 1 to max. So now we have a variable called I. So I'm going to create a, this becomes a variable called I. We are then going to, it says it's going to loop from 1 to max, so we know this is going to go, I is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because max was 5, so it's a predetermined number of times. We then go for j is equal to 1 to I. Now the important part of this that you guys should remember, that I can't really represent using this graphic, is that when I go n4 and I exit this 4 and I go to this line here, when I get to this line here, technically this j would be deleted. J would no longer exist in RAM, it's gone. Only when I re-get there will it be reinitialized and stuff. Do you guys get me on that? But right now, we're over here, so we say for j, and we say is equal to 1 to I. Now in this case, how many times is this going to loop? Once, because it's from 1 to I, because it says from 1 to I is 1, so this is going to loop from 1 to 1. So it's going to loop 1 time. And it's what we're going to do during our loop. Display is going to equal to display plus j. So display is going to be display plus j. J is 1, so it'll be 1. Do you guys get me? We then go to n4. We know for I is 1 to 1. Do we need to go back? No, because it's already, we know we're exiting this loop because it's 1 to 1. So we go down to the next line. Display is equal to display plus a backslash n. So my display is equal to display plus backslash n. So that's an enter, right? You guys follow me? It then goes to the n4, which means it goes back up to the top. I is 1 to max, so I becomes 2. Okay, so it now goes down to here. Technically J was gone as soon as we exited the loop. J was gone, so now it starts at 1 again. Do you guys get me? Then it's going to say, but this time 1, 2, which is, so it's going to loop twice. So now we go in here, display is equal to display plus j, so inside this line, so display is equal to display plus j, so it is equal to 1, 2, backslash n. Oops, sorry, I just put it 2x, my bad. Okay, so it's 1, then we go n4, it goes down to the n4, it goes back up to j. J then becomes increments, so it becomes 2, so we're still in there. Display is equal to display plus j, so we would add 2 there. n4, j is now 2, so it's going to loop again. No, it exits that loop. We go down to display is equal to display plus backslash n, so we add a backslash n to our display. n4, it goes back up to our for loop, which means I increments to 3. Remember, at this stage, j would have been deleted, so I should have deleted that as soon as I exited it, but j would be deleted. But now that we go down to here, j is equal to j, I, 1 to I. So it's going to start at 1, it's going to loop up till 3, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3. Display is equal to display plus j, so display plus j is 1. We go to n4, we go back up to the top, j becomes 2. We enter into the loop. Display is equal to display plus j, so display becomes 2. It goes n4, goes up to the top. J becomes 3. Yes? Okay. Then we go down. Display is equal to display plus j. 3. Are we going to loop again? Because it's j is 3 and the I is 3, so we're done. And display is equal to display plus backslash n, so we add backslash n there. At this stage already, as soon as I've exited this loop, j would have been deleted. J no longer exists. Technically, even the reference to it is gone. It doesn't even exist at all, but I don't want to delete it. So we're going to go down to n4. We then go to the stop step. I becomes incremented by 1. So I becomes 4. 4i is equal to 1 to j. It's going to start at 1. We're then going to say display is equal to display plus j. 1, end 4, up. J is going to become 2. Display is equal to display plus j. 2. 3. I'm trying to do this as quick as I can. 3. 4. Okay, now that j is 4, I is 4, we finished with this loop, aren't we? So we exit the loop, which means that right now this would also be deleted. We would go down here. I would become 5. For j is equal to 1 to 5. This is going to loop how many times? Oh, sorry, I would have entered a backslash in here as well. J would become 1. It's now going to loop 1 to 5. I then going to go display as equal to display plus j. Do I need to go through this loop, or do you guys get what it will do? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is going on the new line in the display, but that's only because my display is not large enough to hold it. But I would hold it. It would then have a backslash. It would then go down after that, so backslash n. It would then end the for. This would be the last time I'd input it, because now I is max, so I would have ended that. And we would then go output display, so the output would be the following here. Do you guys follow? Cool. That is this video complete. I've gone through the practice test with you guys. Your actual test will be similar to this. Hope this helped. Okay. I need to now exit this presentation and exit the recording. Alright.